Technically, a robo-advisor is defined as an automated, algorithm-driven financial planning and investment management platform. That's a mouthful, but in practice, it really is just a combination of a digital technology platform that assists financial advisors. The robo-advisor uses digital technology to create and manage personalized investment portfolios. It's important for superannuation advice. It's important for high net worth investors, but it is increasingly aimed at clients who cannot afford expensive face-to-face advice from a human advisor. Surprisingly, it is not these retail clients using a robo-advisor. It's the human financial advisor using the digital platform to verify their own calculations and provide assurance to their clients. As it turns out, what is currently available as robo-advice might not be that much more cost-efficient than an appointment with a human financial advisor. The target audience seeking affordable advice hasn't really materialized. Perhaps because they're not confident in using robo-advice due to a lack of financial literacy. Providing financial advice goes to the core of financial services. We've moved from traditional finance, where you talk to a bank manager to come up with a suitable solution for a mortgage or for a business loan. We've gone from relationship finance to digital technology finance, also known as fintech. For financial institutions, fintech is a cost saver. The human advisor is expensive, and by taking the human out of the equation, you reduce the cost of advice. And if you reduce the cost, the advice will become more affordable for more clients. You'd expect more people get access to financial advice that were previously excluded. I'm looking at all that, but I'm particularly interested in the notion of trust. Trust in humans versus trust in machines. The findings thus far are quite interesting in that most people accept what the computer says, but not what the human says. But that is not true for everyone. Financial and digital literacies have an important role to play. The challenge in my research is to find proxy measures for trust that might explain the adoption or lack thereof of robo-advice. Robo-advice is often held up as clear of conflicts of interest and free of biases embedded in face-to-face advice, making robo-advice ethically superior to traditional advice. But that is not true. For example, various biases and preconceptions get modeled into the system and into the algorithms that underpin these models. That happens when the programmers train the algorithm based on real data. But that means that the algorithm imports the exact same biases it claims to avoid. What is needed is an unbiasing procedure. But with artificial intelligence in the mix, that is not easily done. And bias concerns are just the beginning of ethical concerns with robo-advice. A persona that I've used to demonstrate where robo-advice can go wrong is that of Marietta, a 40-year-old GP and volunteer firefighter, who receives an offer from a bank to go fully AI. It's sold as something that would save her a lot of time, integrate all her apps and bank products into a single app to run her financial life for her. The result was a raft of red flags, ranging from privacy concerns, inherent bias, conflict of interest, cybersecurity issues, and a lack of regulation. Marietta's insurance premiums went up 20% because the chatbot deemed female firefighters high risk. She received an offer to refinance her mortgage with highly risky offsets. The bank was able to predict her movements and spending on her smartwatch, and her complaints were ultimately seen as a matter solely between the bank and its customers. Marietta would have been asked to complete a risk appetite statement. There are also interesting ways that a client's risk attitude is calculated by a robo-advisor. A robo-advisor can ask you questions and monitor your response even on your laptop. They're assessing things like the blinks and the movements in your eyes, And we've actually got a laboratory within our faculty in Bouverie Street, where my colleagues are doing some of these experiments, which test people how much of a risk taker they might be. Well, perhaps, in theory. The problem is that the market for financial advice is highly concentrated, with a small number of major players protecting their market share. With imperfect competition, it is very difficult for new small entrants to successfully compete or overcome entrance hurdles set by the financial services regulator. The cost of regulation is simply too high. What typically happens, therefore, is that they set up a sandbox with diminished regulation until they mature, when they face a level playing field. My students are increasingly interested in social finance. How do we help people who are in dire circumstances? How do people get out of a debt trap? I think we have a lot of students nowadays who are interested in social venturing, social entrepreneurship, and the like. And you see that in finance as well, with an increasing interest in green finance or climate finance. As this technology evolves, we need to carefully consider the ethical implications and work towards a system that's both efficient and trustworthy. The future of financial advice is likely to be a blend of human expertise and artificial intelligence, offering personalized, accessible advice to a broader range of people than ever before. But we need to remain vigilant and ensure that as the technology advances, so do our methods of protecting consumers and maintaining ethical standards.